You set an alarm last night. Almost everybody does. For nearly all of human history, nobody could. There was no device that would wake you at an hour of your choosing. And yet people showed up. To fields, to markets, to prayers, to ships. Armies moved before dawn. Bakers had bread ready at sunrise. So how did anyone wake up on time? The answers are stranger than a clock. One of them was a man with a long stick, paid to tap on your window. Start with the question underneath the question. How precise did waking up actually need to be? For most people, for most of history, not very. Work was tied to daylight, not to numbers. You got up when there was enough light to see what you were doing. Historians sometimes call this task orientation. The day is measured in jobs, not in hours. Milk the cows. Then the next thing. Then the next thing after that. An hour that always lasts 60 minutes is a surprisingly modern idea. Roman and medieval hours stretched and shrank with the season. Daylight was divided into 12 parts, whatever its actual length. So a summer hour was long and a winter hour was short. In that world, being late in the way we mean it barely existed. But some people did need a specific hour. And the first alarm clock was an animal. Roosters crow before dawn. They are not simply reacting to light. They anticipate it. Researchers have kept roosters in constant dim light, with no sunrise at all. They still crowed on a daily rhythm, just before their expected dawn. So the rooster is a genuine biological clock, and it is reliable. It has exactly one flaw. It is not adjustable. A rooster wakes you at the rooster's hour, forever, so people built things instead. The water clock is among the oldest. Water drips at a steady rate from one vessel into another. The level rises, and marks on the side tell you how much time has passed. Egypt had them. So did Babylon, Greece, China, and India. And here is the useful part. A water clock can be made to make a noise. There is an old account that Plato kept one to wake his students. Rising water forced air through a whistle, and it sounded a note. Whether Plato personally built it is not certain. The story reaches us secondhand. But the mechanism is real, and later engineers described it plainly. Elsewhere, people burned time instead of pouring it. A candle clock is marked in bands, and each band burns for a known interval. They are traditionally associated with Alfred the Great in 9th century England. And there is a simple trick that turns one into an alarm. Push a metal pin through the wax at the mark you care about. When the flame reaches it, the wax softens and the pin drops into a dish. That small clink is your alarm. In China, incense clocks did the same thing. A thread laid across the burning stick, weights on each end, a gong underneath. The thread burns through. The weights fall. The gong sounds. Now, the people who cared about this more than anyone else. If you had to name the group that most needed to wake at a precise hour, it was monks. Monastic life ran on the divine office. Fixed prayers, at fixed times, every day. And crucially, some of those times fell in the middle of the night. Vigils, also called matins, could land around 2 in the morning. Sleeping through it was not an inconvenience. It was a failure of duty, so monasteries developed real, deliberate techniques. One monk, often the sacristan, was made responsible for waking everyone else, which moves the problem rather than solving it. He still has to wake up. Some use the stars. You learn which star sits in which window, at which hour, in which season. Medieval instructions for exactly this survive. Some used recitation. You know roughly how long a given set of psalms takes to say aloud. Say them, and you have measured a stretch of the night with your own voice. Others used candles, or water clocks rigged with weights and a small bell. And this is the part that matters for everything that comes afterward. The pressure to solve monastic timekeeping is a major reason mechanical clocks exist. Our word clock traces back to a root meaning bell, clocca in medieval Latin. The earliest ones did not necessarily have a face you read. They had a bell you heard. The alarm came before the dial. For centuries, that was enough, because the day was still ruled by the sun. Then the factory arrived, and time became something you could be fined for. A mill starts at a set hour. Arrive late and the gate is shut, and you can lose a day's pay. Now, waking up on time has a price. and the price is your wages. Factories rang bells and blew whistles. But a whistle at starting time is far too late to be any use to you. You need waking before that, at home, in the dark. Clocks existed. A reliable alarm clock was still expensive. So British and Irish industrial towns produced an entire job, the knocker-upper. You paid a few pence a week, and a person came and woke you. They carried a long, light pole and rapped on your upstairs window. Some used a pea shooter, firing dried peas at the glass. And there was a rule to the job that tells you it was taken seriously. You kept tapping until the customer actually answered. Stop too soon and you have failed. Bang too hard and you wake the whole street for free. It was ordinary work, and it was often done by women and by older people. Mary Smith, of East London, working with a pea shooter, is among the best remembered. Which raises the obvious joke, and it is a genuine question. Who woke the knocker-upper? Sometimes another knocker-upper, further along the round. Often it was simply somebody who already worked nights, and the job lasted far longer than you would guess. Knocker-uppers were still working in parts of northern England into the 1940s and 50s. Within living memory, in an industrial country, waking up was a service you bought. It ended not because clocks were invented, but because clocks got cheap. That is almost always how these jobs end. So when does the alarm clock we would recognize actually turn up? Mechanical alarms existed in Europe for centuries in tower clocks and grand household clocks. But the personal one, the one on your table, came later. In 1787, a New Hampshire clockmaker named Levi Hutchins built one for himself. It had a limitation that tells you a great deal about the man. It could only ring at 4 in the morning. He never made it adjustable, and he never sold it. In 1847, a French inventor, Antoine Redier, patented an adjustable mechanical alarm, and from the 1870s, American factories began turning out cheap ones in volume. That is the real turning point, not the invention. The price. Once an alarm clock costs about a day's wage, the knocker-upper is finished. Waking up stops being a skill or a service and becomes a purchase. There is one more answer, and it is the oldest one of all. People woke themselves up. If you decide firmly, before sleeping, that you must wake at a certain hour, you often do. Sleep researchers have tested this, and the effect appears to be real. The body begins preparing to wake in the hour before the intended time, which suggests something slightly uncomfortable. The reason you cannot do it reliably may simply be that you have never had to, and the night itself may have been a different shape. The historian Roger Ekirch argued that before cheap artificial light, people often slept in two blocks. A first sleep, an hour or so awake in the middle of the night. Then a second sleep. That reading is debated, and not every historian accepts how widespread it was. But if it is right, the middle of the night was not a thing you slept through. It was somewhere you went. So the honest answer is that there was never one answer. There was the sun, and a rooster, and dripping water, and burning wax. There were monks counting psalms in the dark to measure a night they could not see. And there was a woman with a pea shooter walking a cold street at 4 in the morning. All of it doing the job your phone now does silently, for nothing. You set an alarm last night. For almost everyone who ever lived, that was somebody's job.